Got it. Okay, so the one thing that I'd like to go back and revisit would be the mention of disgust, the feeling of disgust, seeing a bearded man with bright red lipstick on. And I first of anything, I want to say that admitting those kinds of uncomfortable feelings. Now, I'm not saying to just go out and, shout it in public to anybody that's going to listen, but I think when we were talking about those small circles of people, affecting wider change, just starting within their own little corner, their own little bubble, that's how it starts. It's actually being able to admit these feelings that culturally, socially, perhaps would have been shamed or shunned, pushed down, oppressed because it's not appropriate, it's unkind, any one of those things, which all of those things may be subjectively true. I just don't think that it pays in the long run to keep those sorts of things behind closed doors, to be able to admit it and to have other people for whom you can admit it to and feel like it's going to be a safe place to do so. Like, I know growing up the way that I did, to some degree, expressing certain emotions or certain ideas that were offensive to my parents were very swiftly met with punishment of some kind. So you learned as a kid not to do those sorts of things, but that doesn't mean those feelings and those thoughts just go away. I feel like everybody has them for one reason or another, and to have the conversation out in the open with somebody who's going to help you hash that out and not hold it against you, to come to some kind of net positive outcome, whatever that is the best way, in my opinion, to affect change. So all that to say, I appreciate you even being able to say, I'm disgusted, if I heard that properly, I am disgusted by a bearded man wearing red lipstick, because in general I feel the same way. And there may be people out there listening that all of a sudden that flipped a trigger switch. They're thinking, how that's you bigot, you, how unfair of you to think that. um okay, so what can we do with that? Why do I feel that way? And let's move forward with that. So when you sent me that email, I brushed up a little bit on the psychological roots, the foundations for some of these feelings, for disgust specifically, and there was a lot of good stuff in there. So for example, the feeling of disgust for somebody who has, okay, so just disgust, to break it down for anybody who doesn't know, is basically just a feeling within you that kind of gives you that, like I'm nauseated, I want to vomit, it's very distasteful to me. You get that lip curl and the kind of, oh, this is gross,
Well, it's
this is like
shrink
it's
and
like
move
eating.
back too. It's
Right. Yeah. It's like eating sour food. It's like, oh no. So the evolutionary reason for disgust was something to keep us from consuming or being exposed to something that would be harmful to our survival. So it's a very primitive thing. So oftentimes, smells is a big one, might cause some people to gag or even vomit at bad smells or bad, sights that they wouldn't want to consume or be around because it's detrimental to the survival. There's a reason for it. Some people then, who experience high levels of disgust or intense disgust with a lot of things, are generally very orderly people. So if you're talking about the big five in personality, orderliness, neuroticism, openness, conscientiousness, there's another one I'm forgetting, but basically,
extroversion. There's
yeah, okay,
extroversion, and
extroversion, introversion, yeah.
I don't remember if you mentioned agreeableness. I think that's the fifth, but I
Yeah,
usually
the
struggle to
acronym
make
is
five.
ocean. Yeah, openness,
Agreeable,
conscientiousness, extroversion,
neuroticism.
A, neuroticism, A, what's A? There's ocean,
Oh,
Ocean. A
that would be
is
agreeableness, right? Or did you already say
is
it?
it a grip? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
it's
Yeah, it's
agreeableness.
agreeableness. Okay, yeah. So people who experience, high levels of disgust or even often tend to be not as open. They are higher in neuroticism and they are higher in orderliness. So these generally tend to be people that we would be politically considered conservative. They're more concerned with, virtue and values and security and stability and those sorts of things. So that would make sense if a lot of things disgust them. Disgust is something that disrupts all of those things. So that makes sense to me. Now, why somebody would feel disgust at a biological male exhibiting something that is technically considered more feminine, female, sensual, can go a couple different ways. It can go more the route of, is this something that is somehow affecting that person's sense of, stability within the species? So, for example, like, you don't want males to be more feminine because that threatens survival. You have males that are less interested then in reproduction and the typical way of doing things. So that's a threat to survival. That's very primitive line of thought that could be happening subconsciously. Or you have a childhood trauma association with something of that nature, which triggers that disgust within you. So I would think that perhaps it could go both ways for anybody depending on their individual experience. So it's something I wanted to pose to you as a, go rooting around in your subconscious, go Freud on yourself here, and see if any of those things ring a bell to you, or if it even go extra Freud, seeing, because you are a straight male, seeing lipstick on another male totally violates your own sexuality, and so you find it disgusting because perhaps that seems in some way disconcerting to your own view of what you enjoy personally sexually. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, I can give a good superficial answer, but I'd take too long to do the longer one. It would be interesting to compare notes since we both have the same conclusion, which is you. It would be interesting to see whether we get there the same way, because one of the things, and this was a general theme that I tried to emphasize at the beginning of this talk, is a lot of the things that I came up with that, in my case, I was specifically thinking of men doing these supposedly female feminine things. And you can argue whether female is the right word, feminine is the right word, whether it's all culturally constructed, whatever, that's fine. But the point was that I focused on that because that's what prompted the thinking, and maybe it has more potency to me. Plus, I just haven't seen that many examples of women or females doing things that I see as far out, gender bending, whatever. Or also they tend to work better. Like they could, it's easier to get into a pleasant androgynous look rather than a creepy androgynous look, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe I'm just not seeing the right things. I don't search for this stuff. But anyway, but a theme I keep running into is that a lot of this stuff bothers me anyways, on either sex. It's just, it bothers me more when I see it on men, and it bothers me differently. So the thing with makeup is, there's two thoughts. One is, I have I think, pretty low tolerance for makeup in close proximity. Like, I understand if it's in a movie, sometimes they have to do it and so on, and I don't notice as much. But I do have a disgust response to it. And I'm pretty sure, based on things I know about you, that you do not have this. So I physically don't want it near me in general. Like, eyeliner's about, if I can see it. If I can't discern it, and I'm not saying I'm very discerning.
And on other people or on yourself?
On either, but other people. Like, this is, as far as like disgust and keep it away from me, I do not, it's a foreign substance makeup. When you referred to clown world earlier, I thought that's a literal description too in this case. And so whether it's just because it's unexpected to me and I'm not acclimatized to it, it comes out even more on men. So it even more looks like someone's drawing a crude face on top of another face when you see a guy with lipstick. And if he's not even going through the rest of the thing, and I will go this far in terms of calling people out, is that there's the particular person, one of the people I referred to in the email is, and I haven't even done my research. I don't know who he is. I don't follow politics much, but he's been in certain news circles. He's the non-binary nuclear waste guy for Biden or something.
Biden's administration, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't feel, I hardly feel any tremors of awkwardness when I say he, because the whole thing seems so absurd that I just don't feel, I mean, not only do I believe it is honest and true in a defendable position, but in this case, but anyway, so I don't know how much of my perception is being jangled just because I've gotten used to women wearing lipstick, but sometimes it upsets me on women too. Like, have you seen the way, this is just part of the way my imagination kind of works, and I think it gives you some psychological insight into what's so great about me. Have you seen any like primate documentaries, and you see, I think it's chimpanzee females, and they're kissing? I don't know if they've been taught to do it or they do it naturally, but like they've got lots of lips to do it with, and I imagine that with lipstick coming out after me, and it's just oh. And
Okay.
like, it's not
All right.
smoothly done. Like, maybe there's lots of cracks where you can just see the regular colored skin too, so it doesn't even present a continuous surface. Like, it's a whole haunting image.
So this, it sounds to me like you are perceiving it more as an unsettling, disingenuous persona, or a mask, essentially, that it, because it doesn't seem genuine to you, there's this very unsettling sense of stranger, because you cannot then um see the intention or the person underneath. It's a mask, essentially. It is absolutely a mask. Is that maybe accurate?
Maybe it's not the way it registers consciously. I perceive it as a very like a basic disgust, contamination. Like I don't
Okay.
want that material near me. That's okay. When I'm really pushing it in one direction, when I'm imagining like these lips coming out and getting me, it's not like I always think that when I just see, because it can also be quite grabbing. You know, if someone walks by, and this goes along more with, in my mind, like the what we were talking about earlier, I was talking about earlier, the competent, professional, sharp, cool look. That doesn't register as disgusting so much in such an extreme way, but the heavier it is, the more it looks like their face has been contaminated.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
like if it was
That's
drawn on badly, like it's foreign
mhm.
material. I think it's a physical response.
So the heavier it is for you,
Yeah.
the more it's more contaminating. So if have you seen women who wear makeup that it makes their face look very natural? So it just covers up the imperfections, but it looks very natural. So it might just kind of give the lips just a little bit more of a color, simply to look more alive. And perhaps, like I said, concealer to cover blemishes so that it looks more healthy. And eyeshadow that's not, you know, colors that are unnatural to the skin tone, but perhaps more, natural, just to make the eyes look a little bigger, like, mascara that just kind of pops eyelashes a little bit more. So it gives them some contrast, like those sorts of things. Does that bother you, or?
If I notice it, it probably bothers me, except for eyeliner. Eyeliner can look exotic. And I want to make it clear, like, as if in case it wasn't clear already to everybody, that this is just me. I don't know where it's from. To me, it seems like it's the way of the world. Like I'm right, and especially because I grew up like I had a pretty secluded homeschooled upbringing. I
Yeah.
don't know how much does that mean I'm pure. Like I represent the primal ape. This is the way we would see
Right.
it, and you people have just gone off the deep end. Um,
Right.
and I have to watch because there's a little bit of a superiority complex that can come in there, or is it inferiority,
Sure.
whatever that
Sure.
sneaks in there too. But there was an actual question you asked me there, and I've lost track of what it was. Um,
If natural
the heaviness.
bothers
Oh, if
you.
it's probably women have done it. I didn't notice. I don't claim to
Right.
be that observant in this regard, so it's quite possible. Um,
Okay.
but it can go off that end. So I do wonder whether the other thing that is relevant is that there's again, I'd be perfectly reasonable to mention this person, but I'm going to keep them secret just because I feel weird bringing it up. But there is a YouTuber I've been following who I'll probably do a podcast with at some point, who, if I believe what he says, and I do, had a fairly effective visually transition male to female, and looks, as he said, like a female fantasy to some degree. Um,
Mm.
and um, and then he decided this was a mistake. This caused medical problems. This caused depression. I need testosterone, but then if I go on testosterone, the surgical modifications become a pain. Anyways, and he is someone who says that he could have been happily gay, and that he was really wanted to wear makeup as a kid. And I don't know if he had this story of sneaking and hiding somewhere and putting on. And this is where I said, what? How is it that important? I don't understand. But anyways, but when I've never understood having fun with makeup that much, except
Mhm.
sometimes he'll do like the carnival look, and I understand the
Mhm.
carnival look because that just looks like fun. It doesn't look like it. I don't perceive it as a distorted face. I just perceive it as something colorful superimposed on the face. So there is the distortion element to it as well. And so that I understand. I'm on board with that. If people want to go around looking like a carnival all the time, that's fine. That doesn't upset me.
Yeah. And I view that kind of thing as like tattoos. It's an artistic expression, really, just using the body as a canvas. And so, at least from the perspective of perhaps somebody who's more creative or into artistry and perhaps more feminine, I can see on that level a young, who will eventually be homosexual boy being interested in, makeup, because that is makeup in that way, that is part of the feminine art, of alluring men in with the aesthetic beauty, or what is typically considered to be beautiful. There are certain scientifically measurable standards for what is beautiful, and they are based in, again, that whole, what is reproductively fit, what markers make you look reproductively fit. And that's just in like Fibonacci sequence, standard measurements, mathematical sequences of symmetry or asymmetry, what's acceptable and not, in that way that we just inherently, most of us have the same standard of beauty in that way. But I can see, makeup initially. I mean, for that little boy, could have been any number of things. It could have been, and plenty of young boys who play with makeup a little bit when they're that young, because it's just a matter of exploration. Perhaps they're not getting enough attention from mom. They know mom plays with these things. I'll get attention from mom if I do this. Therefore, that's my line of logic, and it doesn't go much beyond that, into their later years. So each individual person is going to, the reasons for doing it are going to probably be pretty different. And I don't think there's a blanket statement that I could make that would account for maybe even a vast majority of little boys that might be interested in playing with makeup in that way initially, because kids are just, I mean, they might exhibit some somewhat average or stereotypical characteristics for little boys or little girls that we might expect just based on sex, but there's so much room for exploration and crossover between the two, that if left to their own exploration would probably gender bend, our expectations would gender bend, well into their teens, perhaps, and sexually, especially experimenting in that way too. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not like I don't think the most constitutionally conservative person. Not only do I think I fall on the more liberal side in terms of, to go back to your big five thing, my understanding is, I don't know how well known this is, or how many other people have looked into it, but I think of Jonathan Haidt as being the psychologist who worked on this and put the political orientation to that system. And I suspect it's hard to tell, because I really don't think I have political views, especially now. It's perhaps a confusing time to have them, if you're trying to be humble and honest. But I think I fall, if I had to pick a side, it would be the more liberal side, or liberal with the toe over in the conservative side or something, which is why I think perhaps in some ways I like to have conversations with people like you, or the last guest I had back in the fall, who are like a mirror image in some ways, like perhaps more conservative with some toes sticking into the liberal side.
Right. Yeah.
However, and including the fact, I have no idea if this is relevant, but I feel it's important to mention, I think I've worn makeup once when I was a kid, because my cousin was over and we thought it'd be fun if she stuck it on me, which would have been fun if it wasn't that it was then really hard to get off and I had to go do a show the next day, because I was in a trio at the time.
Oh no.
I forget, I think we worked it out. The concern was the eyeliner or whatever it was she put around my eyes, that I'd get bruised trying to get it off, because there's really not much, it's a very sensitive, flimsy spot. So that I show up looking, so it's okay, it's going to either look feminine or it's going to look masculine, because it looked like I got punched in the eye.
Punch, yeah.
And then I was into wearing dresses and skirts for play, and I actually wanted to do it at like family gatherings, and I wasn't allowed to, and I've never been sure what to make of that. It's never persisted. Now I can kind of see it for comfort, because they're potentially less restrictive, and I'm all for less restrictive. Right. But I don't know what else was involved with that. But I just wanted to say that, so that people don't think that I'm just some raging conservative.
And that's actually a perfect segue into something I wanted to touch back on, that we talked about earlier, about wearing, being uncomfortable, experiencing discomfort to wear professional clothing in the workplace environment. So to back that up a little bit, for me, I've started to question a lot of things, like why does it have to be, this way, or why is it this way, or why do I think it has to be this way? Can it not be some other way, and why or why not, And a lot of times just societal expectation or limiting beliefs is often the answer to why not. And sometimes that's based in something that's, in my opinion, could be utilitarian, or, knowledge that's been passed down for a very long time and exists for, that reason, because it's the most optimal or functional in that way. But I often wonder, professional clothing, why does it have to be, or why is it uncomfortable to wear for a lot of people? Is there a way to make professional clothing comfortable, or why do we, why do we feel that? Is it because maybe for the lower middle classes, a lot of the professional clothes are made from material that's, rough, or is it because the cuts don't fit us well? We're not all getting our clothes tailored specifically to our body measurements, so something's cutting in somewhere, feels too loose somewhere, or whatever. I have had the pleasure of a few things being made bespoke to me. I've had a lot of my vests because I'm so small, wearing men's clothing. Asian sizes are about what fits me best, but oftentimes they are not of the cut or the style or whatever it is that I particularly enjoy for myself. So I have gotten many of my vests tailored to fit me. And let me tell you that while somebody might think that it is, stuffy and uncomfortable, when you have something that is made of a good quality material that is tailored to fit your measurements, it is damn comfortable. And there, I can imagine that there are some professional clothing that is definitely uncomfortable, like heels for women. That is definitely uncomfortable, and I don't think there's anybody that can tell me that they wear those shoes because they like the way they feel on them. They don't. It is entirely for a particular look, a message that you are, evoking. um but that why society views certain clothes as the professional standard, like what underlies all of that? Why are business suits, made a certain way? Why is that the professional standard? It's because the lines are sharp and cut and crisp, and are done in particular um measurement in certain places to accentuate certain things, again, like makeup, meant to accomplish evoke certain feelings within people? Or can we come up with professional wear that is still considered professional? What standard even, dictates what is professional? Which, another tangent, in that way, is it because we focus on things that make, like, power cut clothes, things that look aggressive and, masculine? Is that what we think is professional for men anyway? Or even for women, the boss lady with the shoulder pads and, stuff like that. There's some similarities with women's clothes in that way, in the professional sphere. But can we maybe shift culture to where professional means and looks something different? Like, there's these they're called Thai fisherman's pants or harem pants that I've started wearing around the house, that you might recognize them as, stuff that maybe a martial artist casual martial artist might wear. They're very oversized in the legs, and super loose, almost bell shaped, and they don't go all the way down to the floor. They stop about mid calf. And the way that you put them on is not with a belt, but you fold, the band that goes around your waist a certain way, and then you tie a tie around it, and then you fold the extra band after you've tucked everything over that tie, and it just stays up, and it's amazingly freeing to wear those pants. I absolutely love them. They are not considered professional by any means because they are much looser. They're not, tighter, accentuating anything. But I wonder, perhaps in different social or cultural expectations, might something like that be considered professional? Because it is, in some ways, it's neatly tied and folded, almost like origami in some way. I enjoy the process of it. I find it very therapeutic for some unknown reason to me. Um, and so I wonder, do our professional clothes then have to be uncomfortable, or why are they uncomfortable? Can we shift? I'm starting to talk in circles a little bit here, but perhaps you're kind of getting the point, the drain I'm circling around here, that we may not have to make those sorts of sacrifices if we were able to shift some things socially, culturally, or even just, I don't know, have different standards for our own clothes, get them tailored, have nicer material. I mean, I know these things cost money, which is why a lot of people struggle to attain them, but they might change their mind if they were exposed to those sorts of things. So
Yeah, I mean, I do see it as being part of the grander network and swirl on the subject. Off the top of my head, I would say that I thought that in the West, male formal clothing was partly military based, and it was uniform and, yes, in some cases it's stylized male form. But to me, what seems important is that it's neat and that that it has a consistency to it. And I do think there's a value to that in terms of presenting yourself that way. I mean, partly I think it's just me that I actually enjoy the fact, like I still feel in many ways like I'm coming from the outside, having come, even though it was years ago now, but having been, as I say, fairly secluded and schooled at home and so on. And the fact that, you mean, I just have to learn how to talk to people and I wear these clothes and I'm in? Like that's it. That's, I can still think whatever I want, but I'm in. Like that seems kind of neat. Like I don't perceive that as an oppressive, weird, arbitrary force, even though we, in some ways, it might be. It's, I just like, and I'm in, and I'm taking part in something that's, you know, it's part of history in a sense, the cultural development of the clothing and so on. And it's like learning to do a formal dance or something, and now you're
Yeah.
one of the dancers.
Mm.
So like that's how I perceive it.
Mm.
But and as far as certain choice, actually the idea of tailoring your clothes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because just personally I have been considering that, because I get cold easily, and so I've been thinking about getting a jacket, and you get something like a sports jacket, or I don't know
Mm-hmm.
technically what you're wearing, but something in line with what you've got, like that kind of thing. I have wondered about what it would cost to have it tailored, or and they're expensive enough, new and untailored. But if you only have a few things, like you say, like if you're farming, which is something I anticipate doing at least as a hobby, like you can wear whatever or nothing basically you want.
Right.
So that you don't have to. It can be tailored, or it can just be huge, or whatever you want. But so for certain occasions, having things that are tailored, I don't know that it would. I'd have to look at the prices. I don't know that it would be that much of a limitation for a lot of people if they decided it was something they valued. You just maybe go without some other things for a little while. But
Right.
so yeah, it's an interesting dimension. What I like about it is that as part of this conversation, we've actually spent a lot of time considering ways. So I don't quite like this language, but it's the modern way I hear it presented. Considering ways to expand or play with various social boxes and so on. So even though like
Mm-hmm.
my motivation is I've got all these responses where I feel like the conservative, where I'm saying no, put them back in the box. The fun, interesting thing is to then carefully taking into account the different considerations that perhaps those people aren't. So, okay, but what if, how would we introduce some of this? How might we actually play with it? And I think there's lots more to think about and talk about in that direction. But in terms of the time that we had initially envisioned, we're coming to the end of it for this podcast. So if there's anything else you want to add, feel free. But I've got, looks like about 2 minutes and a bit left on the clock. Um, and I feel like I'm kind of hitting the end of my,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty good place to conclude. I think we've rounded things out well enough. I'm very happy with it. So
Okay. Well, I don't know. I always toy with this. Do I end it abruptly or not? Anyways, I'm going to end the recording at the same time that I end the actual call, so I don't like fake the ending and then do a real one afterwards.
all right, yeah, yep.
But anyways, yeah, I'll think more, and it's nice to have someone to help me sort out this stuff. I feel like I will get more ideas. Like something's happened. I haven't quite figured out what yet, but it wasn't too
Knocked a
jumbled.
few things loose. Yep.
And yeah, it's interesting to have your input, and I'm, as always, excited to hear more about your project in the future, your community outreach. So we'll keep in touch for sure, and maybe we'll do another one of these things to see if we can get any further on this subject.
Likewise, it's absolutely my pleasure to talk with you always, and I look forward to the next session.
Okay, talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye.